Okay, so this presentation is more in line on the we're at a breaking point. Where do we go from here? Kind of mental framing that I'm trying to set up with these recent presentations. So it's kind of a continuation of that theme. So this one specifically deals with intelligence, which of course we measure nowadays as IQ, the intelligence quotient. It doesn't really matter what you call it. We all know that there are very wise, very knowledgeable people in our society, whether they're measured or not measured. We know who they are. We understand that it takes a wisdom and intelligence of a particular quality and caliber to do things like build bridges and save people's lives at hospitals and so forth. Now, does that mean that everyone who gets these jobs is intelligent? No, and that's part of the problem. But I'm going to get to that in a little while later. What I do want to point out, though, is that very intelligent people exist in society, doing all sorts of things to keep society running. Almost all of our technological advancements have come from very intelligent people contributing to society. My IQ is 150. I tested in second grade, so it could be a little bit higher now. They say by 25 you max out your IQ, so I'm probably 155, maybe 156. Anyway, you can find intelligent people all across the nation. You don't have to be in a big city to find very intelligent people. The issue is generally older intelligent people are in big cities, and that's just a matter of our social structure. We expect that only the highest paying jobs will be in big cities. We don't put high paying jobs out in the country usually. And that makes some logistical sense. The country is mostly agricultural. There's some commercial, maybe a little bit of industrial, but there's not a very sophisticated infrastructure in most of the rural areas of our country. Meanwhile, in the cities, you have office jobs all over the place that pay very well and require high technical skill and high capacity for intellectual activity. That doesn't mean that you can't have an impact out in rural areas. It's just a little more difficult. Uh, so the problem we're facing right now is that IQ across the country is falling. And on the surface, this may not seem like something that you can correlate to other things, but uh, one of my previous presentations was about the falling birth rate. If you look at it more abstractly, the falling birth rate it's not really a cause, it's more of an effect. It's a follow-on impact from the cause, the root cause itself, which is higher stress in society. In our society, things are more expensive. It's more difficult to own a home. It's more difficult to build a family. Social media has made us incredibly partisan towards each other. And so we're seeing with all of the stressors in society, older populations that we have to support, wages not keeping up with the cost of living and so forth, people aren't having children. Well, in the same way, with all of these social frameworks that we have to live within, more intelligent people are being stuck either just trying to get by like everyone else or competing with each other for who can outpace the other before our demographic and overall social decline begins or worsens. And that's not a great situation to be in. When you have a very minute amount of people to begin with, we're talking less than 1% of the population that is very high IQ, and on the broader end, maybe 25% of the population that is more than average. So that's not a lot of people. A quarter of the population is more than average, and the amount of the population that is exceptionally gifted, the nuclear scientists and the materials engineers and all of these people who are supposedly making all of these great contributions to society, there's so many of these people of this very small group that are instead just trying to get by like everyone else. And in the process, it's very alienating for these people. I'm speaking as someone who's tested 150 IQ. I mean, trying to live among people who do not appreciate the contributions to society that very intelligent people have, it is very difficult. It's like knowing 11 different languages and being forced to speak the most basic one, because if you speak anything else, people are going to shame you for being too smart to be around them. Which our society is on all sides of the spectrum, um, throwing away logic for what feels good, what the short-term satisfaction can be. And we're seeing this left and right. We're seeing this in the public sector, in the private sector. Think about consumerism. We're taught from a young age that we should not save up money. We should not think about long-term strategies for growth in our own lives or in our communities. We're not even taught to believe in community. We're instead taught to believe that money is the end all, and if you can make a lot of money, then you're the best guy in the country. And that's just such a terrible way to go about building a society. And most very smart people know this, and so it alienates them further. Now the problem with this situation where very smart people are alienated is that it becomes almost impossible as smart people have less and less influence in society to make their voices known. Like I said before, we're talking 25% all the way down to 1% or less of the population are very intelligent people. That means that in an election, every single election, very smart people are going to lose. Whatever very smart people want, they're not going to get it unless they have influence that is larger than their actual population. As a society becomes more populist, more gut feeling, what feels good, as opposed to logic and long-term strategy focused, those smart people are alienated further and further until what they have to say isn't even heard anymore. And that's kind of where we're going. Now, we know, based on what ancient civilizations like the ancient Greeks thought about intelligence and its role in society, that there are a lot of very important things to be garnered from the intelligence of a society. People, I understand, and you know, maybe I'm not the person to say this, but based on my interactions with people who are not as intelligent as I am, who don't have as much aptitude or intellect or developed capacity for academic achievement or occupational achievement, whatever you want to call it. Based on what I've interacted with them on, many people who are not as intelligent still understand at the core of the issue that it's much more important for a society to be driven by intelligence than by emotion or, instinct. However, when you have populism, when you have a pluralism of different ideas, people tend to go with what feels good, not because they know it's right, but because they're overwhelmed by choice. Very logical people of high intellect are able to look at very difficult situations and come out of those situations with real impactful solutions, as opposed to just talking points or feel good ideas that can't be implemented practically. We're at a point in our society right now where that's not happening, where people are so overwhelmed by the situation that they're just falling on, their own dogma as opposed to what actually is necessary to meet the circumstances of the situation. Now, we've seen this before. The ancient Greeks prized intelligence because they saw over and over again that societies, city-states, any grandness of a civilization, large or small, they would go through these cycles where usually it would start with just a handful of people who essentially built the civilization themselves, usually through oppressing a certain group of people, the less intelligent, the less capable, and they would force them to help build that society. Over time, they would gain some rights, and then much later on, those people would expand their rights, and new people would gain rights, and eventually the same thing would happen over and over again. You had a very small group of elites that essentially controlled everything, but they were intelligent enough and capable enough to maintain order. And as more and more people had a say in how society was run, it slowly devolved into pluralism and populism, where people were doing what felt good and what was a short-term gratification, as opposed to long-term strategy for the survival of that civilization. We're seeing the exact same thing here in the US, where we started out with a very select group of people who had any influence at all in society. We expanded access to power and influence through suffrage and so forth, uh, still keeping it relatively select. And then we broadened it now to the point where, we're intentionally trying to dilute the population as much as possible, for a lack of better words. And now I am not talking about any of those conspiracy theories, great replacement or anything like that. That's not at all what I'm talking about here. But what I am trying to say is, when you have people who don't occupy the same cultural background, even if they're of different ethnicities, even if they're of different races, if they don't feel that they are all working towards the same goals, then there's disunity, there's tribalization, there's factionism, and all of that works to divide a society. And it's not just a division that forces from the outside can take advantage of. It's a division which keeps people within that society from being able to agree on even basic things. And that's why we're seeing healthcare be overrun. We're seeing all of these monopolies forming, and no one's doing anything about it. 100 years ago, this would have never been acceptable, but now it's passing under the radar because people are so overwhelmed by choice, overwhelmed by different stimuli that they have to respond to, that now they're either numb to it, or the people who actually have solutions can't get their word in because there are so many talking heads in the media and corporate ecosystems of our country. So where do we go from here? It's not going to be good. I can pretty much guarantee that. Every single civilization has gone through this. It starts out small, it grows, it gains power and influence. More people have a say. Things are prosperous for a time, and then as resources dwindle, as people become more and more belligerent about their beliefs as opposed to basing those beliefs on logic, you get into a situation where people who can see the writing on the wall, as in intelligent people, realize, oh, we're getting close to the end of the civilization. We might as well just do whatever we want to do and see what sticks. That's kind of where we're at right now. We're having people constantly doing what they can nowadays to game the system. If you're smart enough, you can get out of the system with quite a lot of money and influence, and that's what people are trying to do. And it's not because they hate the country. It's not because they want our way of life to fail. It's because every society goes through this, and we're pretty much at that point where if you're trying to work to build your society, then you're wasting your time. That's how a lot of people see it. Now, I don't want to encourage people to throw themselves into the camp of get yours and you're on your own kind of thinking. That's not what I'm saying here at all. It's just a matter of fact that civilizations tend to go through rises and falls in the pattern that we've seen, and it's very difficult to get outside of that pattern when you're already on the decline phase, which is where we're at now. Does that mean that it's impossible? No. I'm trying to build through my company, Sensable, a system that is parallel but separate from our current civilizational scheme. Right now, we're in a consumerist cycle where we're basically eating ourselves alive as a country. I think we can get out of that, but to do that, we're essentially going to have to go backwards in that progression. So where we're at an oligarchy right now, as was on that chart, we need to go back to kind of a more democracy, maybe feudalist style way of doing things, where people, some don't have a vote, but because they don't have their vote, they default to people who are more intelligent and more capable of good logical decision making. That's where we need to be. Not everyone needs to vote, and really, you look at our elections, not everyone does vote, and when they do vote, they're not voting based on a desire to keep society healthy and strong and capable. They're voting on what makes them feel good, who makes them feel good, who makes them feel heard. We hear it over and over, and this is on both sides of the spectrum. So, I don't know that there's a much better way of dealing with this situation than just acknowledging that not everyone needs to have suffrage. And I'm not saying, women or blacks or whatever. I'm black, and I hear those arguments and I tune out, because any intelligent person knows of a sample population, you're going to have very intelligent women, you're going to have very intelligent minorities, you're going to have very intelligent white men. Look, intelligence is intelligence. And just like we would be able to say, oh, somebody's physically fit or somebody has a lot of emotional control, we can also say someone is mentally capable. And it doesn't it's not predicated on any one condition or characteristic. We need to have very smart people all throughout our society, in every ethnic group of our culture, and that should be the goal. And we've allowed ourselves to get away from that. So, as with all of my videos, I'm not trying to say that we need to have an uprising, a radical uprising of intelligent people. For one, that'd be impractical. I wish, it'd be great if the country was really run by people who were very intelligent, as opposed to, orange clowns and sleepy people, if you get the reference. But, we don't have that choice, right? Society devolves into populism. People voted for these people. People voted for the major corporations to win. I mean, whether they realize it or not, they've allowed their system to be co-opted. And it's just a matter of time before the system swings back to the beginning. And when it does, we certainly will have every opportunity to build something better. And that's what I think we should be focused on right now. How can we prepare for that next system? How can we set up the framework so that when things do shift, we can step in and guide society towards a better alternative?